find out if you're ready for love. Here's your marvelous host, Nikki Lee.
This is your host, Nikki Lee, and today Hugh Ballou is with me. How are you today, Hugh?
I am great, Nikki. Thank you.
I tell you, I am so happy to have you here with me today, and we were cutting it kind of close, but Hugh just got off the plane and just got home, and he's here.
I am here, and I am glad to be here, and I'm glad to be talking to you and all your listeners.
We are going to talk about some interesting stuff today. Hugh has got a new book called Transforming Power, and we're going to find out all about what that means, and we're going to find out more about Hugh's background and the things he can do to help people. Are you ready?
I'm excited. I want to hear about all this.
Want me to tell you what I've been doing while you were out of town?
Yeah.
Okay, I think first of all, the book is called Transforming Power. Tell us what Transforming Power is.
It is a collection of stories from leaders that I decided were transformational leaders. There's a particular definition of transformational leader, but basically, a transformational leader is one that inspires transformation in an organization, in people that belong to an organization, and ultimately in themselves. So I looked for people who I knew were this type of leader. It's different from being a charismatic or autocratic leader. It's a leader that empowers leadership development on teams and also lets the organization they lead transform on the value of its own merit and the vision of the leader. So the stories in the book are designed to encourage and inspire leaders everywhere, no matter where they're leading. Okay.
Is there any specific sort of leaders that you think would benefit more, or is it pretty much across the board, any person in a leadership position could benefit?
Well, Nikki, I work with leaders around the globe. As you know, I just got back from part of the month in Austria working with a different kind of program than most of my others. But I think you change the geography, you change the name of the organization, you change their mission, and the issues are still the same. It boils down to leadership. And if you want to have effective teams and effective strategies, you need to have effective leadership. So I think the lessons are generic. They're transparent from one organization to another. So even though some of the stories are written by a pastor that's transforming a church, which, by the way, I think is the most difficult place to lead, even though that story may be about that particular situation, there is a lesson and an encouragement from a leader in the trenches by reading the story. When I was 18, I decided, I saw somebody direct a choir, and I said, you know what, I could do that. So I started a 40-year career of conducting, and I had never directed a choir, but, you know, I saw somebody do it, and it inspired me. So the lesson here is if you see somebody do it, if you read about it, there's a word of encouragement that, yeah, we could all do that. So that's my vision for this book and why I started this project.
Well, you know, as I was reading through the book, I was bringing 20-some years of business management experience into it, and there were so many things I went through and highlighted, and they're very basic, even business principles, management, leadership, business, any sort of those things. So there were so many beneficial, and like you said, no matter what the setting, the merits of the story, the gist of the story, and the moral of the story were so similar, So it really doesn't matter. It's just like I tell people about promotion. If you can learn to promote, then you can promote anything,
That's right.
With enough creativity.
Right. Well, if you believe in it.
Very true. So you mentioned 40 years as a choir director. What does that background help you bring to this project and to this topic?
Well, that is leadership condensed and focused. You step up on a podium and you got an orchestra in front of you, you better know what you want to accomplish. You better have your plan together. You better lead. So I think the skill set is transferable. So I teach leaders based on what I learned and the skill set I developed in 40 years of conducting. If you step on the podium, you got a 2-hour slot with some union musicians who are real cocky, and you got to make sure that you get something done and that they know that you know what you want to accomplish. On the other hand, you hire a really good oboe player to play the oboe in this orchestra. You don't tell them how to play the oboe. You tell them what you want. You don't micromanage. So there's different lessons in the skill set. And the basic one is if you're going to lead that's a meeting. 2-hour rehearsal is like a 2-hour meeting. You spend twice as much time minimum planning it if you really want to get results. So I guess people have probably attended a poorly conducted meeting in their lives, and the results are directly proportional to the amount of planning that goes into your leadership, especially meetings. So I wrote an article which is published this month in Performance Magazine, and it's Performance Magazine goes to about 500,000 leaders, anybody with a C in their name, CEO, CFO, etc. And it's about team performance. And the title of the article is Orchestrating Success with Your Team. And so it's like conducting a symphony orchestra. You have all the different personalities and all the different players, and you got to pull them together as a leader. So I think there's a lot of lessons to learn in the trenches with the orchestra. So I've enjoyed applying that skill set to orchestrating it with CEOs, and you know what? It works.
That's great. You know, what's funny is I was in way back years ago. I was in the school band, and I never saw our band director in the light that I do now. After reading your book, I'm like, she maybe was doing more up there than I thought she was. So,
exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure she would agree with that too.
That's right.
So, how did you get the idea to write this book?
Well, I started the quintessential example of transformational leader is a choir director for a choir. You have these singers that come together where you transform all these individual voices into a choir. And then you begin to teach the music, and to put it together, you transform the choir into an ensemble. That's a very different feeling, where they breathe together, they feel the phrases together. So that is a very visible sign of a transformation. Well, you bring people together in corporate America, and you put them on a committee, or you put them in a department, or you put them in a division. They have to learn how to breathe together, how to understand each other's mission, and how to work together toward a common goal. So I learned about that transformation early in life, and I wanted to spread that message further. So I started writing, and the more I wrote, the more I realized I knew about organizational structure. People think that musicians are just right-brained, but you know what? You got to have a very analytical brain, very mathematical brain, a very structured brain to be able to work in a musical structure which is very exacting and very unforgiving, really. So to combine the creative and the structural and being able to plan is a very good skill set, and it does apply. So I wanted to, there's a baseline learning piece in all of this. So I thought, well, I'll write about it. And I'm not a writer, but I have something to say. So I began putting it on paper, and it helped clarify. And I think it's good to have those things in writing is a good basic guide for people that's pretty universal.
You know, it's amazing how clarifying writing can be. Even when it's just a rough draft, it just helps you to see things more clearly and understand it better. And then to be able to take that and fine-tune it, you know, I say fine-tune all the time, but it has a whole different meaning when I talk to you. But to be able to hone that and to present it to people in such a way to help them see things in a different light or more thoroughly, it's a wonderful, writing is just such an awesome thing.
Oh, it is, and Transforming Power is my fifth book. It jumped over the fourth one, which is still being finished. But I started with my first book in like 2002, and I outlined it. And I began, oh, wow, I think I know more about this than I do. And I put it away, and it kind of worked inside of me. And then in 2004, I pulled it out about April, and in 30 days, I put it all down. And I started with the chapter, Getting Things Done. And that I said, well, I've written this. Now I got to really model what I've said, and actually knew what to do, and it helped me fine-tune my skill set in getting things done. And when I worked in the church arena, and I would hire an orchestra, and you're paying them practically by the minute, but you've paid for 2-hour rehearsal, and every minute over that you go to an accelerated overtime rate, so you must be done on time. So you begin backwards. You say, what do I want to accomplish? And you plan backwards. And so you have to know how to plan that rehearsal to get everything accomplished. And it's a very exacting skill set. So I began this Getting Things Done chapter, and I put it into life, and I put it into balance of how do you get personal life balanced with business life, and how do you make sure everything that you're handling in your business gets done without working harder but working smarter. So
right.
I work to inspire myself by saying, yeah, this is how you do it. And then when I wrote the rest of the book, I had a schedule, and I got it done in 30 days, like I said.
Cool. Well, anybody in a business kind of situation needs to set the goals and figure out how to get there. And the thing is, if you don't know where you're trying to go, it's hard to plot the trip. It's hard to figure out how you're going to get from point A to point B if you don't know where point B is. So you need to know where you're heading and where you're going. I think writing's the same way, but people disagree with me on that one.
Oh yeah, I think you're right.
I like to have a plan, but leave it flexible if I need to. But I like to at least see in front of me what I plan to do with the book.
Well, and my vision for goal setting goes back to Napoleon Hill, who interviewed Andrew Carnegie and was introduced to all the great leaders in the world. And then he wrote these great laws of attraction, and he wrote Think and Grow Rich, which is really not about money. It's about setting goals and accomplishing those goals. And the people that set goals are successful.
Right.
And you're programming your subconscious, and you're programming yourself for success. So I think goals are essential for business leaders, church leaders, non-profit community leaders, whatever. I think it's so important. So I'm glad you like goals.
Oh yeah. Well, and have you ever been around people and they feel like they're just kind of floating through life? They're not really heading toward anything, and all this time passes, and you're like, so what have you been doing? And they're like, nothing, and it's like, but when you have goals and you have things that you're trying to accomplish, it's such a different lifestyle, and it's so fulfilling, I think, because especially as you're reaching the goals or getting closer to the goals, you see that you're making headway and you're accomplishing something. I like that.
Well, my books are not really original like most of us have learned from others, and I try to give credit where I've learned things, but it's a compilation of what I've learned through many years working with some really important people. And I remember talking about a particular business issue with a business attorney, and he looked over his glasses, leaned forward, and said, God's only given you so many days on earth. Why do you waste one? Let's take care of this and move on. And I think that's true of goals. If you don't know where you're going, you're just going to lose a lot of valuable time.
Yeah. Well, and once the day is gone, you're not going to get it back. So.
Yeah.
So tell me how you chose the people that are included in the book. Was there a grand plan for who you picked to include?
I chose 22 people, and they're people that I knew personally, and I knew set a pretty high bar, and I knew there were people that could write or had a story to tell. And 2 people just couldn't get to it. They wanted to do it, but they couldn't. I really had nobody turn me down. And nobody asked what's in it for me. I just said, I want to inspire leaders, and there's not a book out there with leadership stories like this. Would you participate? And they said, sure. So that was one of the pieces. If somebody was enthusiastic, I use that guideline when I teach people how to recruit teams. If somebody's not enthusiastic about doing them, just thank them and get somebody else to work with you. So they were enthusiastic, and I had 19 that actually followed through with manuscripts and editing and go through that whole process. I knew a number of the people, and they were different places in life. People represented different cultures and different races and different places in life, different ages. And some of them were referrals from some of my top leaders. I said, who else do you know that would have a story like this? And right. So some were referred by other people, and because of that referral, I got immediate acceptance. So I wanted people that had credibility, that had actually done something important. And I think in this book, the authors have about 200 or so books currently on the street in print. So I knew that they wrote books and had them published. So that was another piece, that they really had some credibility as an author.
It was funny when I first heard about you. I went to your website, which is www.shoebaloo.com, and Baloo is Ballou. And I looked at the page that has all the people that participated, and just looking at their pictures, not even reading about their background, but just looking at the pictures, it looked like you had picked a great variety of different people, and which is nice. It's nice to bring all those different backgrounds and thoughts and experiences, because every one of us experiences things differently.
I love when I do public speaking, motivational and training and with groups, and I love quoting the composer conductor Ralph Vaughan Williams. He's supposed to have said that music did not reveal all of its secrets to just one person, and you can change music to business or leadership or other things, and I believe you learn a lot of things from a lot of people. So that was the other goal, is to have a variety of lessons for people to learn from in this book.
True. I did something sort of similar in one of my books where, I wrote the majority of the book, but I went through and I wanted other people to share their experiences in different topics. Because I figured no matter how much experience I brought to the book, everybody has their own experience, their own take on it, and their own perspective. And sharing that, I think, just greatly deepens the value of the book. So it's great to include other people's experiences. And, you might get to contribute to one of my next books.
I love it.
Now that I know how to find you.
I'm right here. Actually, we live in the same state.
I was going to say, you're actually not that far away from me. I'm used to dealing with people. Everybody seems to be on the West Coast that I deal with, but you're actually, close to where I am. I think we're just in opposite ends of the same valley, actually.
I was in the West Coast a few minutes ago.
I know, literally.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I had somebody tell me that they feel that authors have a responsibility to their readers. Do you agree with that? And if so, what kind of responsibility do you have to your readers?
Well, that was the motivation when I was talking about writing the chapter "Getting Things Done" in the first book. I had a discipline, but the fact that I wrote it down and was going to publish it said, well, you know what? I got to be sure I do this. I'm not going to write about something that doesn't have integrity, that I don't do myself, that doesn't work myself. Okay. And I went back and tweaked a little bit of it. I said, well, maybe I can add something to this or change this because I forgot some part of this. So I think it's important I want to provide people with practical, usable items. Every one of my books has something you can take away and do right away. Right. You can read something and you can act on it right away. It's not an academic exercise. It's a practical exercise. And I said in the preface of Moving Spirits, Building Lives, that I didn't come at this as the ultimate authority. I came at it as somebody who had experienced all these things in life and had made all the mistakes so I could tell the story. So it's I wanted to write from real experience. And so my obligation to my leaders is to have integrity about the experience and to tell it like it is. And to give them my vision for my business is to make a difference in people's lives, and the mission part of it is to give people useful tools that they can implement easily. And I try to do that in the writing. That's my obligation to my readers.
Very good. So, Hugh, as I was reading the book, I noticed that a lot of the examples are drawn from experiences within either a church or religious setting and that sort of thing. How can people who are considering reading the book or getting the book, how can they equate those experiences to, say, a business situation or another organization? I think you even mentioned nonprofit organizations. Yeah,
in my experience in work, I worked in a church of 12,000 members, and I had a lot of business leaders on my committees, and I found that they were intrigued by some of my leadership pieces, running meetings and building teams and managing priorities. So I discovered that they had the same issues in the business world that we had in the church community. I mean, a 12,000-member church is a small business. It's a pretty good-sized business. Yeah.
You said it the first time, and I'm like, I don't think my town is a little bit bigger than that.
Yeah, it was a big place, and I didn't know everybody on the rolls intimately, but I had a lot of people, and I learned a lot of the principles there. I failed a lot. I succeeded a lot. I took it the next step forward. So, and I would go from facilitating a group that was an artistic group or a religious group to a business group and a community group, and there was virtually no difference. It's people coming together, using their best thinking skills and making their best decisions. And I think that's the common element. It doesn't matter what you're doing. I particularly wanted people of faith, of Christian faith, to write from their experience. I thought it was a divine inspiration for transformation. The leadership piece is universal, and people can learn from that. So David Stanley, Elvis Presley's stepbrother and bodyguard, has made a movie and went through that process of transforming his dream, which was on a napkin, and he had no money, into a full feature-length movie. B.J. Dorman went to prison. His best friend caught him on technicality and put him in the slammer for little financial piece in the law. And he's come out of it and built this big entrepreneurial forum that has high integrity and insists that people are in legal compliance every bit of the way. So he took an unfortunate experience and moved it forward and made a great big envelope for people to learn about business. So there are stories that relate to the business world or the other part of the world that is not necessarily from the church. So there's a combination of experiences in there. But they're all about leadership.
Well, and I liked how it was set up where you read about the person and what they've done in their life, and then you read the experience that they wanted to share. So you've got an overall picture of the person and the things that they've done.
Well, thank you.
If you
I thought that was important. I thought it was important that readers know who that person was and what they were about.
Very true, very true. So who do you feel is the perfect person to read Transforming Power?
I believe that each of us has a leadership quality in us, and some people aren't comfortable speaking in front of large groups, and that doesn't matter. Every person you come in contact with, you influence positively, you influence negatively, or you don't influence at all. You get to choose. And so I encourage people to influence others in a positive manner, to leave an impression on their lives. You can inspire somebody just by who you are. John Maxwell has the book out, 360-Degree Leader, and his premise, which I very much agree with, is that no matter where you are in an organization, you influence people above you, beside you, below you in the organizational chart. Once in a staff planning retreat, I brought goals, and I was the only one that brought goals. And I talked about the goals and shared them, passed them out, made myself very vulnerable because they were very specific, very timed, and had the steps in them. When I came back 3 months later to the next planning retreat, my goals had been accomplished, and partially because I had shared them with people who had contacts that could help me. So by being vulnerable, I also brought in this energy field with people that knew people, and they could be helped. I didn't ask for any help. I just shared the goals. But what I found out was that to the next retreat, everybody else brought goals to share. So I wasn't the top person. I wasn't leading the retreat. I didn't have a leadership position in that process, although I was a leader in that organization. I was able to impact people all around me. True. Because I had done a strategy that worked, and I had set the bar a little higher. Right. So I think anybody that's working anywhere with people can rise to the next level in effectiveness. And we all have days that don't go as well as we would like. you know. So I wanted somebody to have a story and read about somebody else. Say, you know what, I could do that. I love the story by William Willerman, who's a writer. I think he has about 50 books on the street and lots of essays, and he's a lecturer, and he's a bishop in the Methodist Church in North Alabama. And he's trying to change the system, which is an age-old system and needs some updating, and he's changing the system, and he feels a call to do that. And it's not going pretty smooth. Some days everybody wants to do things like they used to, especially in a church setting. So he wrote a story, What If I'm Wrong? And that's a really good place. That's very vulnerable. It's very brave to say, I've got a real good, strong vision, but what if I'm wrong? And we all think that. We try and we want to give up sometimes. So I appreciate him putting himself out on a limb and saying, I'm gonna tell it like it is. So I think anybody that's leading anything or wants to lead anything, no matter what they're doing, could find some inspiration in these stories to help them.
I noticed that there was, each story was so well put together, but you also saw their vulnerability, their doubts in certain things. Am I right to do this? Is this the way we should have done it, kind of thing? And I think making mistakes is human, but the great part is when we can learn from our mistakes, and when in our writing we can learn from other people's mistakes as they're sharing their story and what they did and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. We have actually got 2 questions in the chat room, and one of them, let me kind of give you the gist of what. Well, let me read it to you and see if you think this is saying the same thing I do. Okay. How did you go about it? I know when I have other people contribute to my books, I have them all sign a release for me that I have permission to use their name and their information. Did you do a similar sort of thing in your book?
When they mentioned somebody's name, we had to get permission to use that name.
Right.
And so we had to get permission.
Part of the question is talking about, can somebody come back on your copyrights and that sort of thing, and is it against a person's freedom to do that? But you have to be very careful when you're quoting other people or talking about them that you do give, that you make sure you have their permission to do that sort of thing. And I usually get it in writing or in an email, and then we keep those on file for me and for my publisher so that if there ever is a squabble or dispute, we have proof that I did have permission. And that's why we have the disclaimer in the beginning of fiction novels that, any similarity to anyone living or dead is purely coincidental, because you can't open yourself up to problems if you don't cover your bases with that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And my publisher insisted that they have the signed originals of those permission sheets. So I couldn't even photocopy them. They wanted the originals. So that's important to make sure that you have that procedure covered, because when we speak to each other, we hear through our own filters. So when you write it down, it's very clear.
True. Well, that way you've got their words, and you know that there's no doubt what they meant to say and that sort of thing. Because, even when I read my information, I tend to ad-lib it and change things as you go, and you don't want to risk doing that with somebody else's words. You want to get what they said.
Absolutely.
Let me read the rest of this to you. So some people have real callings in life. I feel my own is so huge, it's like a boulder on the road in front of me. How do you deal with it all?
How do I deal with it all?
Sounds like they know what your day was like today.
Well, my goal today was to get home.
Just to get home on time.
Oh, my word. I felt
and he made it with 3 minutes to spare, too. We're so proud.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, I missed 2 connections, so it's a miracle I'm here, but I wanted to be here.
I keep waiting for you to just stop and breathe a couple times.
I'm sitting looking out. I live in the woods, looking out at the woods, so I'm nice and calm now.
I know. I think the calmest you've been in days.
Yeah, I think addressing that question, I can give a little tip to readers too. That part of what I use the strategy with my business strategy and my coaching clients is it's important. And we talked about goals earlier. And it's important to set goals, and it's important to set goals that stretch you, goals that are realistic that you know you can accomplish, but not slam dunk that are going to bore you. You want goals that are going to stretch your ability and stretch your organization and help your organization to grow. And the most important thing, back to Napoleon Hill, the most important thing about your goal is not that you've reached that quantifiable, specific, articulated number at the end, if it's a number or a result, but what's happened to you and your organization in doing the goal. So it's important that you've established a goal that's worthy, that's resonant with your core values and your business values. It's going to build out your business and enhance it. So the important thing is what happens to you and your group and the transformation of your organization in the process of the goal. So we write goals, and we look at them and we go, wow, that's big, and we put it in the drawer. And then, a month later we pull it out and say, wow, that's big, and put it in the drawer. So that's of no use at all. You read it every day, and then you put benchmarks. 30 days, I'm going to do this, next 30 days. Your short-term goals should be less than a year, and you should have 30-day benchmarks articulated, which, will vary. With some of them will go faster, some will go slower. But here's the secret. Here's the tip. I learned this from Mark LeBlanc, who's the president of the National Speakers Association this year. He encourages leaders to break down your goals into 3 little daily steps. They're like baby steps, I call them. He calls them high-value activities. I call them high-value achievements, because I teach people to go for results. So if you articulated 3 little things, they could take you 5 minutes, they could take you an hour, they could take longer. But if you took your goal and you defined 3 high-value results you wanted to see every single day, now 5 days a week, that's 15. That's 30 and a half in 2 weeks, that's 60 in a month. You think 60 important little steps wouldn't make a difference in your life in moving toward that goal? It's breaking it into things you can do that are valuable, result-oriented, valuable steps. We think about activity and we get focused on, well, let's do this because it's easy. No, let's do what's important first. And if it's small and you break it into several pieces, then you're going to be successful. So I would say to that listener, take your big goal, articulate it, take your benchmarks, articulate those, and then plan tomorrow's high-value achievements today. When you finish today, say tomorrow, these 3 things are very important. I'm going to make sure I get those done. And don't make them too big. Make them baby steps, and you will be successful a step at a time.
That's right. A lot of people look at a project or their goal and it's just so big, and it would be fantastic to reach it. The thing is, if you're only looking at the finished product, you can become overwhelmed and discouraged and that sort of thing. But and I love the benchmark idea. Say, what do I need to accomplish by the end of this month? And work toward those things. Kind of like, I had the goal as a kid to be a best-selling published author. Well, that's all fine and good, but there's a whole lot of steps that go into making that happen, and it takes time. It does. But
every person in Transforming Power was able to accomplish their goal because they framed it in a way that they understood and they could move it forward.
That's it. Well, and have you noticed that sometimes the initial goal evolves and changes over time?
Absolutely. You learn as you go. If you're not growing, then that goal isn't as valuable as it needs to be. So you will grow, and you'll find out that you got to set a very specific target to hit it. Like you said a while ago, you're going to get there unless you set the specific target. But then the time piece of it is not an exact science, but give yourself enough time. And don't be sad if you reach it too soon.
Definitely not. Not.
There's 2 things in my estimation that make goals really work. The first one is breaking them into those little steps. You have to write it and you make it very specific, but you break it into those baby steps. The second one, SMART, specific, measurable. I use accountable for A. Other trainers use something else, realistic and timed. A, share is accountable. Share the goal with at least 3 people that will help you feel accountable. So the accountability and the baby steps make it work.
Okay. So if the goal seems to change a bit as you're getting closer to it, that's not a problem, right?
That's not a problem. You've identified the core value of what you want to achieve. And that's, as you grow in your business, your organization grows, that will grow with it. So be open to that.
Well, especially I think the more people you have involved and the different personalities that come into it, and the deeper you get into something, because like when you have a goal for something that you're not real familiar with, you have one thing in mind, but then as you get deeper into it, you find different things, and it's interesting. And books are the same way. When you're writing a book, I know beginning to end what's going to happen, but as you get into it, it just kind of meanders in different little directions, and other things happen, and it's wonderful when it's finished, but things do change over time, which is that's half the fun of the project, I think.
Absolutely. But having said that, it's good to be open as you learn things and you want to, but to be specific. Thomas Edison knew he can invent the light bulb, and it took him 10,000 times. And he said, I didn't fail. I found 9,999 things that don't work.
I love that.
But people laughed at him, but he knew he could do it. So in some instances, your vision is so strong and people try to pull you away from it. Writing it down and being committed to it and reading it every day makes you not only believe you can do it, but makes you know you can do it. So there's that side of it too. But being open, and he learned along the way with his methodology, so he had to change a lot of pieces of that. But he knew ultimately he wanted that light bulb to burn, and he did. And we all use them every day now. So. Yeah. So in one of the sections, you actually wrote one of the sections of the book. I did.
I was reading through and I was, hey, there's your story. So do you want to tell our listeners about your story and why you included that in the book?
One of the common problems I run across is the autocratic leadership style says we want to change the organization, and they dictate what the change is going to be and what it's going to look like, and then they dictate to their teams how it's going to happen. Well, and then they complain to me, my teams aren't effective. Well, it's because you told them everything to do. It's like hiring the oboe player and telling them how to play the oboe.
Right.
I think fundamental transformation in organizations happens from the bottom up. The leader gives the vision, but the leader begins with the grassroots and builds an understanding of what's valuable about that vision and builds the grassroots movement so it actually goes from the bottom up. And that, it takes longer, but it's better, it's more solid, and it's lasting when it comes as part of a change of a culture. So I came on a church staff in 1979, and my 3 children were the only children in this church, which had 2,300 members. When I got called to the staff, it went below 1,000, and half of those weren't showing up, or 60% of them weren't showing up. So it was a huge facility with very few people. So I started a children's music ministry, which overlapped with the education ministry, and basically built momentum with that ministry, which impacted the whole culture, the whole organization. So when I left there 20 years later, it was the smallest demographic, children, when I started. When I left, 0 to 6 years old was the largest demographic in the church. So basically I used that, and there was meaning for doing it, there was reason for doing it, but the transformation happened that the adults and the youth and everybody wanted to hop on board because it was cool, but it was meaningful. So right. I impacted the whole culture from the bottom up, which is the children, and it was infectious. So my story to leaders is you don't want to push it from the top down. You want to articulate your vision. You want to be the leader. You want to empower strong leaders around you, but you want to enable the people in the culture to understand the why and to be part of it and to build a strong transformation that's going to be there after you're gone.
True.
So
well,
that was why I wanted that story there.
The more involved other people are, the more they get behind the idea and want to help with the idea and that sort of thing. And it's awesome to watch that sort of thing. When you ask, you don't just walk in and say, "This is what's going to happen," and I say so, because that's not effective. It may make the change, but it's not effective, and it's not going to help the overall group.
No, it's destructive.
It is. Well, and you're not showing any real confidence in the people in the organization. Give them the benefit of the doubt and say, I want to know what you have to share. Because it's amazing the things that come from people when we ask what they want to do to share.
It is. It is.
So tell me what's your favorite story in the book and why it's your favorite.
I don't have a favorite. I have a relationship now with everybody in the book. Tom Troger writes poetry. He writes hymn text. He's a flute player. He's sort of like the Garrison Keillor among preachers. He tells these stories that just have amazing impact. He included one of his poems in the book. It inspires me in a very different way. Willimon is willing to be vulnerable. John Savage talks about the different decades in a person's life, which were transformational. Roland Rinks in South Africa, he talks about how over the years he was able to participate in impacting the change in the culture. I look at them. It's like people say, "What's your favorite color or your favorite piece of music?" Well, I like them all, and so I've included all of them as my favorite story. So it's my favorite book. How's that?
There you go. Okay, that works. Well, see, at least you didn't give me the pat answer there, because it's like picking your favorite child. Oh, come on.
That's right. You get into deep trouble, but I think every single story is included because it has great merit.
Right. That's as it should be too.
Yeah.
So this isn't your first book. Tell us a little bit about your other books.
Moving Spirits, Building Lives, a church musician is transformational leader. I tell the story in there of what I told earlier in this hour about a group of singers come together and they've transformed it to a choir. And you go to ensemble, and in the church setting, you continue to transform people's lives and their faith journey. But I realized that in that 12,000-member church and a 3,500-member church, in any size church, I was responsible for a whole lot of structure and organization. So I took that and I wrote it down in systematic form, how to motivate groups of people, how to build teams, how to run meetings. I knew all this stuff, so I thought, well, when people see me do it, they like it. So I thought I'd write down how to do it. And so I put it in a very systematic, short. I write for people like me. It's short chapters. It's to the point. There's a little quote and there's a little challenge at the end. So I kind of write for myself. And so some people like that. So I found that people liked the ideas, but they needed some traction. So I did a workbook for transformational leaders, also called Moving Spirits, Building Lives, a workbook for transformational leaders. So there are templates in there of working through people develop visions and missions and goals for organizations, but they never stop to think about their personal lives.
True.
What do I want to be? What is my personal vision? What is my mission in life? And what are goals that are important to me personally? So I feel like transformation begins with yourself, and you begin to identify your skill set, your goals, and what you want to impact you want to leave in this world. So the workbook is the how-to. There's a flow chart. How do you control your time? How do you track your time? There's a publicity worksheet. People want to do publicity for events. Especially musicians get so involved in producing events, and it happens with play directors and community project leaders. You get so involved in doing the event, you forget about the publicity. So that publicity piece, I think, is valuable to people in a lot of different walks of life. So I went from there to teaching about teamwork. So I wrote a book on building high-performance teams, systems, instructions for leading teams and transforming organizations. I believe you do it through groups, and you, as an effective leader, you work with most of your people in groups, and then you're a few people individually. But you learn to work with groups in an effective manner. And if you've ever been a part of a dull, boring, team-killing, unproductive meeting, that's a good book to have. And it's both the workbooks come with permission to copy all the forms. So I hate to buy a book and then you have to get permission to use something out of it. So I just give people permission to use all the forms. Copy them, use them with your team. Buy one book and use them. The fourth book is, like I said, is being tweaked right now. It's the Transformational Leader. It's a basic primer leadership. So it's more generic and it's expanded with more techniques and strategies that I find day to day when I work with leaders in their challenge. And it will have a workbook with it, which will be number 6. And the 5th book is Transforming Power. And I have a collection of articles and MP3s on the different subjects that empower leaders. So I believe in sharing what I know and just kind of getting it out there so people can use it.
Right, because it's all information that people in any kind of leadership position or who want to be in a leadership position need to learn, and they need to learn how to apply these sort of things.
I paid the price and made the mistakes and learned from it. So people might as well learn from me, and they can buy my stuff and learn what I learned, and maybe save some time.
and maybe save some of those mistakes.
Yeah.
I said that in the intro of one of my books. I said, okay, look, I've made all the mistakes. Now I'm going to tell you what to do and how not to do it. Save you a little bit of time along the way.
Well, hopefully
I didn't have a book when I got it started.
Yeah, and I didn't either. I had to learn a lot of stuff, my own stupidity or whatever. But hopefully it's written and presented in an experiential context so people can build their own skill set as they're reading and learning the strategies.
Right. You mentioned that you have a free report on your website and you have articles and that sort of thing. What sort of things do you offer, and who should go take a look?
Well, they can look around. I have on HughBallou.com. I believe I have a little quick Hugh's 10 tips for power-packed meetings. I find that everywhere people struggle with effective meetings. So it's like the choir orchestra director's perspective on how do you plan a really good rehearsal. How do you plan a meeting that people are going to go out there still humming the tune and want to come back the next time and sing again. So people hate meetings. You want to turn that around and have people love meetings because they're productive and empowering. So there's a Hugh's 10 tips to effective meetings. And then I have on the Center Vision, there's a click on there for facilitation, a tab, which takes you to my Center Vision business site, which has there's a facilitation guide, and there's a guide on worship wars where people fight. And you know what? I found out, and with the depth of work I'm doing in corporate America, that people get in wars in other places too. It just doesn't happen in the church. People, different personalities and different behaviors cause conflict in the workplace. So I think it's important to talk about it and learn from it.
Definitely does. So if somebody is listening and looking through the information that we're going to put out this month about you, and say that they think that they may have a friend who could use the information, what sort of person would they think about that would benefit? If say I'm thinking I've got friends that are in different positions within a company, or maybe even somebody getting out of college who's just getting into the workforce. And, I mean, they've got the book knowledge, but they don't have the, personal experience yet or work experience. What sort of person would be a good person to receive your book as a gift?
Anybody who wants to do a better job. as a leader. Anybody that thinks they do a good job, but they want to do a better job, and somebody that's just starting as a leader. So there's two different places. I try to find a new tool for my leadership toolkit on a constant basis, and sometimes the tool is an enhancement of something I already do or a little different twist on it. So I find that I need to keep myself fresh. So anybody that likes to read, likes to learn, wants to be a more effective leader, they would certainly benefit from any pieces of my articles or books. There's on Hublot.com is a products tab, and it takes you to the page where you have all the stuff. You could write the chapter "Getting Things Done."
I know. Well, I like writing that chapter first because then you're like, oh, I'm talking about getting it done. Okay, that means I need to do it, don't I? So I like that. I like that. Next time I talk to somebody that can't finish a book, I'm going to say, okay, no, this is where you need to start the book.
So I didn't write it chronologically, and people don't need to read it from front to back. You can just pick it up and look at the contents. The workbook, I divided into four sections. I divide leadership into 4 categories. Foundations, which is your visions and your goal and those important things we talked about. Your relationships, who do you need to be successful? What relationships do you need to build and maintain, and how do you use those people in strategies and use their influence, and how do you work with them and help them in building the bigger envelope for leadership? And then systems. You've got people and you've got visions. How do you make them work? So developing systems that actually work. And then balance. How do you balance it all? So foundation, relationships, systems, and balance. I'm pretty simple, so I like to put things in just 4 categories, and I think most things fit under one of those categories. So the workbook takes you through that. And the people in the Transforming Power book were able to balance their lives so they could get things done. I don't have anybody in there that was obsessive compulsive that worked all the time.
True.
Some people work, they all work very hard, and they all are very committed to their mission, but I don't have any people like Thomas Edison that didn't sleep.
Well, he's waiting to turn the light on. Come on now.
Yeah.
You know, we've all seen people or organizations that we feel need to improve their leadership skills, and especially we've gone to meetings with people who are like, man, I wish they'd read a book about this. So how can people, if people don't think they need to learn anymore, say they think their business is going fine, and a lot of people do, what sort of things could they ask themselves or consider that might help them understand that it wouldn't hurt them to get another perspective? I'm hoping
when I was interviewing for this book, I interviewed one person that was doing another book and couldn't do it, Cal Turner, who was the CEO and president of Dollar General. And Cal, his dad founded it. So when Cal took over as president and CEO, he went to his key leaders and said, I got this job because of my genes, not because of my abilities. I have a vision, I have skills, but I have gaps, and I need you to fill in the gaps. And he taught me that leadership was about those gaps. And it's not saying you have weaknesses. It just says you don't need to be doing everything. Right. So people that are trying to do it all and they have no time or no life want to learn some tools that they can work smarter and not harder, and identify those gaps and learn how to empower the people around them. So if you can't get everything done, if you have people that you wish, employees or colleagues or team members or boards or committees or whatever, that aren't performing, you want to figure out how to do it, take it up a notch. Mm-hmm. I think you'll find the tips that I have in all my books, especially Transforming Power. You know, I think we get stalled because we think, oh, it can't be done. Well, you read somebody else did it. Yeah, well, they can do it. I can do it.
Right, and they're willing to share how they did it. So.
Yeah. So, Simon, if you read a story in Transforming Power and you think, well, I can do that, then it's the reason for having the book.
That's right. Well, and like I said, I think any kind of thing like that, you never stop learning new things, new ways to do it, and hearing somebody else say, this is what I did and this is how it worked, that's so much. I mean, it's so much better than trying to muddle through it by ourselves. I've done it both ways. And muddling through your own self just kind of, it takes you a lot longer to get there. But
anybody who wants to get things done and do a better job would be a candidate for any of these books.
True.
And I like reading the how-to books, but a reason I put this book on the market is because people need to read about it and feel the emotional piece of it and be inspired by that piece. So I think it fits together with my whole methodology is to have stories that people have actually done this, real people.
True. I think it's going to be a nice addition to the books that you've got now, to be able to show the vast array of different experiences from people. It'll be a nice addition to your group of books that you've got.
Well, thank you.
So I noticed a phrase on your website that says you are the right motivational speaker. I like that. Tell us why you're the right choice.
That's just hype.
Oh, come on.
No. I attend a lot of events, and there's people up there that either waste time with something that's not relevant and it's fluffy, or they're too blame academic. And I go and say, this is just too hard. Yeah. Like I said with the books, when I talk in front of groups, I've been given the ability to energize and inspire people, and I think that makes me the right person for any kind of group. It doesn't matter if it's a nurses' convention or a Shaklee convention or a bankers' convention. They have to work with people, and I think they all have the same challenges, getting results from people they lead. And so my niche is to bring the conductor hat on and say, you can lead this orchestra, and you can lead them in harmony, and you can lead them to the final cadence, and they'll all get there at the same time. But it does require reframing some of your leadership skills, some of your methodology, some of your strategies. So I present it in a different framework than people have heard before. So I think that I've been told by numerous groups that it has come in at a different paradigm than they have heard before, and they could hear something in it that was valuable to them. So that's the reason I put I'm the right one, because I think I come in with a different and fresh perspective.
True. Well, anytime you come into a situation, because I've done a lot of work with businesses where you come in and they need help, but when you're working it and living it every day, it's very hard to see the problems. It really, because you just get used to it, and like when we get to the point with the final galleys of our book, I don't know about you, but when I'm at the final edit, I don't see a word on the paper. I just don't see it anymore. And I think it's the same way when you're in a situation in business or anything like that. You're too close to it, and you just don't see what needs to be done. And having somebody come in with the appropriate experience and with a fresh vision of what's going on can make a huge difference in what you're doing.
Well, getting out of the trench and getting in a different... I thought of this when I was trapped in an airport overnight. I thought, well, I'm out of my element. I'm having to reframe my life and think about the sins of my youth. But you can get out of the trench and think about it. So that is very true. It's very true.
Very true.
Fortunate to have some endorsements from some major people like the Chicken Soup authors and John Gray and Bob Proctor, some leaders that are out there doing some really good work, and they thought worthy of the book to say some good things about it.
And Hugh, we're just about out of time. Do you have about a minute's worth of information that you want to tell us about anything that's in the works, or any last-minute information you'd like to share with us?
I'm working on that basic guide, that Leaders Transform. So as people get any of my stuff and they have something that works, that they want to celebrate, I'd love them to email me, hugh@hughballou.com, which they can find on any of my websites. Email me and let me know either a question they want answered, because the books I write are from real-life experience. So if there's some input people would like to have, the other book and workbook are being formed and shaped right now, and they're formed from real life. So if people want to say, here's a real-life challenge, I'd love for somebody to try to stump me. So
we've had a challenge. We've had a challenge. Okay.
Give me some hard ones.
Okay, well, let me just remind people, Dale, that we've got a challenge from Hugh. And if you have any questions, you can post them here on the show link also if you've misplaced the other information. But definitely show up at any of the stops and post questions, and Hugh would be happy to help you. And thank you very much for being with us, Hugh.
Well, thanks for asking me. You have a great day.
You too.